Good morning and welcome to the Point. After an unprecedented presidential election, the outcome of which left some people jubilant, others stunned, Donald Trump on Friday was sworn in as the 45th president of the United States and gave a speech that some may not have expected. Here's part of what he had to say.
For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. And this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again.
Even as he became president, some of his cabinet nominees on Capitol Hill were facing some pretty tough questions. That included earlier in the week, West Michigan's Betsy DeVos. The hearing began with President Trump's selection for Secretary of Education, laying out her vision.
If confirmed, I look forward to working with him, Vice President-elect Pence, and all of you to bring educational opportunity to every family in this great nation. While we may have differences, I think we can all agree that learning as a lifelong pursuit is a fundamental American virtue. We are blessed beyond measure with educators who pour themselves into students. The schools in which they work are as diverse as the students they educate. In fact, all of us here and our children have attended a mix of traditional, publicly funded, and private schools. This is a reflection of the diversity that is today's public education. Growing up in Holland, Michigan, I attended local Christian schools and then Calvin College. My greatest educational influence in life was a public school teacher named Elsa Prince. While her students called her Mrs. Prince, to this day, I just call her Mom. When Dick and I became parents, education took on a whole new meaning. We recognized that other parents were not able to make similar decisions about their children's education based on their income or the zip code in which they lived. When our oldest reached school age, we visited the Potter's House, a Christian school which serves many low-income families in my hometown. We saw the struggles and sacrifices many of these families faced when trying to choose the best educational option for their children. For me, this was not just an issue of public policy, but of national injustice. I committed to do something about it, and it's become my life's work. I applaud the great work of the Potter's House and its co-founder, John Boy, who is here with us today. He and his team of teachers are doing a great job. But here's the sad reality. In the past 28 years, the need and demand for these other options have grown unabated. I share President-elect Trump's view that it's time to shift the debate from what the system thinks is best for kids to what moms and dads want, expect, and deserve. Parents no longer believe that a one-size-fits-all model of learning meets the need of every child, and they know other options exist, whether magnet, virtual, charter, home, faith-based, or any other combination. Yet too many parents are denied access to the full range of options, choices that many of us here in this room have exercised for our own children. Why in 2017 are we still questioning parents' ability to exercise educational choice for their children? I'm a firm believer that parents should be empowered to choose the learning environment that's best for each of their individual children.
Like many of the nominees of the new president, Mrs. DeVos has come under the fire of Democrats, leading one Republican senator to question her rather tongue-in-cheek.
I'm really struck. The kind of reaction your nomination has elicited. So let me just ask some questions. Do you support public education?
Absolutely, Senator.
Man, that's amazing. You would think some would have us think that you do not. Do you believe that all children deserve to have the opportunity to receive quality education?
Absolutely, I do.
While a former vice presidential candidate was much more direct.
The nation deserves a Secretary of Education who's a champion of kids, parents, state and local control, and outcomes. And I also think the nation deserves a Secretary who's a champion of public education. In a 2015 speech on education, you were pretty blunt, quote, "Government really sucks." And you called the public school system a, quote, "dead end." In order to clarify, you never attended a public school, K-12 school, did you?
Correct.
And your children did not either, correct?
That's correct.
And you've never taught at a K-12 public school, correct?
I've not, but I've mentored in one.
Okay. I worry about the effect of a leader who believes government sucks on the morale of the workforce.
No matter which of his nominees are approved or when, Donald Trump is already president of the United States, and Order 1 will be working with Congress. We talked with some of the Michigan congressional delegation about that. You've seen the peaceful transition of power here a number of times. You obviously later went on to take this office and have been here. What is the difference between those times and this time, if there is a difference?
You know, first of all, it's a peaceful transition of power. It is, in Donald Trump's words, huge. It is, and I got to say, most people didn't think this was going to happen. I didn't think it was, the last couple of weeks that he was going to win either. But it is beyond expectations. New drapes and new carpet and new heads and all these different cabinet agents, thousands of people in terms of the regional directors of all these different agencies. I mean, it is a pretty big deal. And they're going to have a number of these cabinet appointments approved probably this weekend. Not all of them for sure. Some are going to go in the next couple of weeks. But ultimately, I think they're all going to get done. But it is really huge because all the different levels, the assistant secretaries, and everybody else, there's a big change. The other thing that's different than 1980 is that, of course, Republicans by a narrow margin control both the House and the Senate. That wasn't the case with Reagan. Reagan had to really work the other side of the aisle. He worked with the Gypsy Maws, the very moderate, mostly Northeast, Midwest Republicans, and the conservative Democrats, the Blue Dogs, to get things done, and he built a coalition to get it done. Trump's got both narrowly, and of course the rules are not always just a majority. You need often 60 votes in the Senate.
Does he have the ability, from what you've seen so far, to build those kind of coalitions within his own party, within the Republican? Because there are a lot of Republicans that are still not on board.
Yeah, we'll see. The proof is going to be in the pudding. The governing really does start the 20th at noon, and you got to develop those relationships. You're still going to need to work across the aisle because Republicans and Democrats, neither side really votes in a solid block often on some of these big critical issues to go, but the proof's going to be in the pudding. We'll see how it works.
You know Betsy DeVos well. She has been around Republican Party politics in Michigan for years. She's had her hearing. It'll be the only hearing, according to Senator Alexander. How do you look at her chances of being being approved?
I missed the hearing. I wasn't able to watch it. I was at the governor's state of the state in Lansing. The time conflicted. At the end of the day, she's going to get approved. I don't think there were any massive errors that they're going to cost her way. And generally, very seldom. You still have a honeymoon period. I know this is a little different with some of the folks that are not voice that they're not going to attend, but there is usually a pretty decent honeymoon of the approval. Look, he won, and he ought to have the team that he wants with him. The other thing that I find pretty interesting over the last week or so is that you look at it, and I know a good number of them. Betsy, of course, has been a friend a long time. But in the process of quizzing these folks for the different appropriate Senate committees, often there has been a pretty remarkable difference between what President-elect Trump said on the campaign trail and what that nominee is saying as it relates to the same question. So as an example, Mike Pompeo, great choice for the CIA, served with me on the Energy and Commerce Committee, traveled together, our wives know each other. He was served on the Intelligence Committee as well, first in his class at West Point, served on the Intelligence Committee. Couldn't find a better background. Out of the blue for a lot of us, we didn't know that he was going to get selected. He has a difference of opinion from what Trump said on the campaign trail relating to waterboarding. He said he's going to follow the law. He knows what the law is, and that's the answer. Boom. He'll be one of the first ones, but clearly a big difference between where Trump is, and there's other differences like that too. So I think as you look at these different cabinet heads, they've got some differences. They're not afraid to voice them, and as you look at the next team, you want people that are not necessarily yes men or women at that table. So I think that could be a strength.
That's one view from the House and a majority Republican. But what about the Senate and the Democrats who are in the minority, including both of Michigan's U.S. senators? You'll hear from them next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. We spent most of last week in Washington talking about exactly what this new president could mean for the legislative process. Both of Michigan's U.S. senators are Democrats. We talked to both of them about President Trump. Talk to me about some of the appointees, about some of the cabinet nominees, and some of your view, because you know some of them very well, Senator Sessions, with whom you serve.
Sure.
And obviously you have some differences with many, if not all.
Sure. Well, there's certainly some people I'm going to support. I think that General Mattis as Secretary of Defense is a good pick. He's competent, knowledgeable. I think the national security team is important. I personally believe that should get done right away. That there's a lot of reasons why we need some grown-ups in the room, knowledgeable people when it comes to national security, hopefully on the day that the president is sworn in. I do think there are a number of different things that relate to the rest of the cabinet, though, that's interesting. Unusually, we are looking at a cabinet that is almost all multi-billionaires, which is unusual. And in many cases, people who do not support the mission of the department that they are being asked to run, which is also interesting. I mean, people who've sued, they had the EPA who sued the EPA, or Labor Department who has said that robots would be better than workers because they wouldn't complain and file sexual harassment suits. And I mean, it's just, it's an interesting thing. If you're looking for putting people in, that don't support the mission of their departments, this is the cabinet. So we'll see what that means overall. And I'm still sorting through who I will support and not. And it's based on issues, it's based on competency, and there are people I will vote for, and there will people that I won't, and it will be all based on what's best for Michigan.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you made the decision on Betsy DeVos.
Yes,
I believe you
I
said
did.
that you are not going to support her nomination. As a fellow Michigander, obviously, that is something that you had to consider. Give me your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, it is something that I considered, obviously. I want to be able to support somebody from Michigan. I personally believe that her track record and what she's advocated for and stood for is not in the best interest of children and education. And I think it's good to have choices, but personally I think that the private sector winner and loser model doesn't work everywhere. And in the case of education, we can't afford losers. We need every child to have an opportunity to be successful and to have ideally a quality neighborhood school and certainly choices for families. But I have a very different view and believe that she does not represent what's best for Michigan. And in her hearings, one thing that also came up that really concerned me was her indicating that our special education laws should be run by the states. And we have a national commitment to making sure our schools are open and available for children with disabilities and special education. And that was a surprising comment that concerned me.
We're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act and what happens to that next, but taking that aside for a moment, what happens next? By the time this airs, I say we'll have a new president, cabinet will start to go into place, president will get many of his nominees approved, I assume, as if history is any, serves as any precursor. What happens here in the next 6-8 months?
Well, there's going to be a huge debate about health care broadly. And again, there's differences between what the new president has said and what his cabinet officials are saying. He has indicated he will not cut Medicare. He is supporting a nominee for Health and Human Services who put forward a proposal to unravel Medicare as we know it and cut $1 trillion over 10 years in Medicare, turn it into a voucher. So you'd go buy private insurance and then you'd have a voucher to help cover the cost. Very different than today, and I strongly oppose that. And so there's also a huge debate about how, the president has said he wants to cover everyone and make healthcare more affordable and better, which I support. I think the issue is making it more affordable for people, and I would love very much to work with him on that. But then the Congress, the leaders are suggesting essentially unraveling the whole healthcare system and going back to something that would have tax credits where, again, you pay for your own health care, you'd find your health care, and then you get a tax credit applied to your taxes when you at the end of the year when you do your taxes. So that would take us back to where we were before. I don't think it's in our best interest. There are about 2 million people in Michigan that in some way would lose their health insurance and ability to see a doctor under the proposals that have various proposals laid out. So we're going to debate that and determine what should happen. I personally believe that we need to commit to fixing problems in the Affordable Care Act, but just repealing it without a better system, I think, is very irresponsible.
Quick last question, just popped into my mind as you were saying that. If the phone rang over there and it was Donald Trump and said, come on down, I want to talk to you about health care, is that something you would do?
I would always talk to a president. It doesn't matter who that person is, and I had conversations with President George W. Bush. So I'd love to talk to him about health care. I'd love to talk to him about bringing jobs home and my Bring Jobs Home Act that closes a loophole to make that easier. So fair trade policies, as far as I'm concerned, if he wants to work with us for things that help Michigan people, then I'm all for it. If he wants to take us backwards and undermine our basic American values, then count me out.
Senator, this is an interesting time to be in Washington, interesting time to be a senator. You've been participating in the confirmation hearings for at least 3 of President-elect, as this airs, it will be President Trump nominees. Give me your take on this process and how it's going. This is a kind of a rapid fire process when a new administration comes in.
Well, it has been rapid fire, and I guess it kind of depends on some of the nominees, how the process is moving forward. Some are more contentious than others. The one thing that is certainly troubling is that a number of these nominees haven't filed all of their disclosure information to outline potential conflicts of interest. That's a normal course of action. You have FBI screenings, you have full disclosures of potential conflicts as well as your financial backgrounds, and so that has been problematic. The ones that I have had the hearings with have filed the required disclosures, and we've moved forward and have been very straightforward.
Is it from your standpoint, as a sitting member of the United States Senate, somebody who served in the House, is it largely the prerogative of the president who serves in his cabinet? Obviously, you're going to have ideological differences, but if all of those other criteria are met, the background checks, the conflict of interest, and those kind of things, should the president have pretty broad discretion in who he chooses?
Yeah,
he or she chooses.
certainly I think the Senate plays a very important role about asking the tough questions, having those kinds of disclosures, so if any potential conflicts are there, that they are aired out in front of the public. The hearings are an important part that the public needs to have an opportunity to see the men and women who will be carrying out a lot of those policies. Most of the work is done at the cabinet level and with all those agencies, so it is really fundamental to democracy in this country that the public has a chance to see these nominees. So they should go through vigorous questioning. That's part of the process.
I saw some of that at a hearing this week in Washington for Michigan native Betsy DeVos, who was nominated as the Secretary of Education. You are not on that committee, but you will ultimately be asked to vote on that nomination, we presume, in the full Senate if she passes out of committee. Have you made any decision about what you're going to do?
I watched part of the hearing. I was not on that committee, watched it. I've known the Betsy DeVos and the activities of her family and education in Michigan, and I've always been concerned about it. They have focused on looking at diverting money from public schools, traditional public schools, into charters, as well as vouchers into private education. I always have believed that she is driven primarily by ideology and not by hard facts. And if you look at the facts of charters, for example, in Michigan, they have not performed that well. In fact, if you look at charters around the country, Michigan is a really poor example of how charter school law was formulated and implemented, and she was behind that. So she would be, in my mind, the wrong person to be trying to push education policy, particularly the fact that it's all about ideology and not about looking at the facts. So I didn't see anything in that hearing that changed my opinion.
Let's jump forward for your new assignment. You are following in the footsteps of the man that you replaced here in the United States Senate. Senator Levin was on the Armed Services Committee for as long as anyone can remember, was chairman or vice chair of that committee for years and years and years, and that's going to be your new assignment this year as a person with a military background. What does that mean to you to be on armed services?
Well, it means it's a great deal to be on armed services. I'm very excited about that service. To me, the fundamental responsibility of federal government is to keep us safe. It's about national security. No one could possibly argue with that. That is our number one job. And I have served the last 2 years on the Homeland Security Committee. I'm going to continue to do that in this next Congress, and now adding armed services really gives me an opportunity to focus very intently on national security, both at the home front as well as our operations overseas.
Final question. This may be impossible to answer, but as we sit here today, and as this airs, there will be a new president of the United States. We're anticipating it now. This city has changed. There is a great deal of angst, not just here, but across the country. There are people polarized on both sides. What does this next session of the legislature look like under a Trump administration with some of the strong feelings that particularly people on your side of the aisle have?
Well, it's unknown. I mean, it's hard to know what will happen. I mean, I was certainly very hopeful after President-elect at that time, Trump was elected, that there would be some attempt to try to heal the country, pull it together. We haven't seen that yet. Hopefully it'll happen going forward. Certainly I'm a person who always believes that the best public policy that you can make is usually bipartisan, that you have to have people from both sides coming together, finding common ground. I think the American people are hungry to see that here in Washington, where we come together and work on a bipartisan basis. So I hope President Trump will view it that way. I hope my colleagues in the Senate and the House, Republicans, will also attempt to do things in a bipartisan way. And I think that is absolutely critical for us to move this country forward in a positive way and heal the division that has been so wide over the last really the last few months in the year.
We'll be back with more To the Point. So after the long process of electing a new president and now the inauguration, it's time to get down to governance. That's something we'll be following from here through the next 4 years. I hope you'll join us every Sunday morning, 10 o'clock on Wood TV for To the Point.